like to call this meeting to order for the Geneva Historic Preservation Commission for Tuesday, May 28th, 2024. We'll start with a roll call.
Jensen?
Here.
McManus?
Here.
Phillips?
Here.
Solomon?
Here.
Stazen? Zelmer?
Here. We have a quorum. Okay, the next item on our agenda is approval of meeting minutes for May 21st, 2024. Any revisions to the meeting minutes? If not, can I get a motion to approve them?
I move to approve the minutes of May 21st, 2024.
I'll second.
Okay, call the roll.
Jensen?
Aye.
McManus?
Aye.
Phillips?
Aye.
Solomon?
Aye.
Zelmer?
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the public hearing. I'm going to read the public hearing procedures, and I will also, hearing is proposed demolition of contributing property at 117 South River Lane. First, can I get a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion to open the public hearing.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Public hearing is open. It is the Historic Preservation Commission's responsibility to conduct a public hearing for case number 2024-34 for a proposed demolition of contributing property at 117 South River Lane in order to receive testimony in favor and against the proposal. The procedure will follow for this request is, first, the preservation planner will describe written term items, reports, and plans into the record. Second, the applicant will present testimony supporting the basis for the demolition request. Third, the Historic Preservation Commission members will have opportunity to question the applicant. Fourth, the Preservation Commission will receive citizens' testimony in favor or against proposed demolition. Those in attendance should refrain from audible gestures to support or disprove testimony given by the applicant or any other person testifying. Disruptions of the hearing process will not be tolerated. And finally, the applicant may provide a conclusion at the end of the testimony presented. Once all the testimony is introduced into the record, the public hearing will be closed. However, in lieu of closing the public hearing, the commission may request a continuance of the public hearing to the date certain for a purpose of the gathering additional information or for consideration of public testimony presented this evening and subsequent meetings to which the public hearing may be duly continued. Tonight, or within 45 calendar days of the close of the public hearing, the Historic Preservation Commission will make motions based on the finding of fact consistent with appropriate standards identified in the City of Geneva Code. Once an affirmative motion has been made for either request and seconded, the determination of the applicant's request will be decided by a simple majority of those commissioners present at the time of the vote on the motion. The Commission's determination of the demolition request is final, except that a motion to deny the applicant's demolition request may be appealed to the City Council by the applicant. If the Commission's determination is appealed by the applicant, the City Council may uphold, amend, or reverse the Commission's determination. Let's talk about the testimony procedure. In order to give testimony, you must print your name and provide your signature in the spaces provided on the registration sheet located at the lectern. By signing the registration sheet, you agree to understand that anything you say will be considered sworn testimony and that you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. When giving testimony, please come forward to the lectern, speak clearly and slowly and loudly so the HBC members, the audience, and the recording services may hear you. Before stating your name, if you speak begin by stating your name. If you speak multiple times, please state your name each time you enter into the record. Please be concise when presenting your testimony. If your point has already been made, it is not necessary that these points be repeated by the speaker or other speakers who may testify. Each of these points is recorded and will be considered as the Historic Preservation Commission develops its recommendation. You may provide testimony in written form, but such written testimony must be presented to the preservation planner prior to the closing of the hearing. After the process is completed and everyone wishing to present testimony has spoken, the commission will then decide whether it has heard testimony and enough testimony, adequate testimony, in order to reach a recommendation. If the commission determines that it has heard adequate testimony, the public hearing will be closed. However, if the commission determines additional testimony or information is necessary to make determinations, then the public hearing will be continued within the procedures established by the ordinance. After the public hearing is closed, the Preservation Commission will refrain from receiving any additional testimony, either for or against the petition. Testimony presented before the commission forms the official record of the public hearing for case 2024-034. The commission will deliberate on the presented testimony in regard to the applicant's demolition request, make appropriate motions, and vote yea or nay to approve the demolition request as presented, approve the demolition request with amendments or stipulations, table the request to a date certain for public purpose identifying additional information unavailable at the public hearing that is warranted and necessary for the purpose of making a finding of fact, table the request to a date certain for the purpose of providing time to fully evaluate new evidence presented at the public hearing, or table the request to a date certain to solicit expert testimony to evaluate the information provided either as part of the demolition application or at the public hearing. At this time, I will administer an oath to those who have signed the registration form. Anyone wishing to give sworn testimony, ask questions, cross-examine anyone giving sworn testimony, please stand and raise your hand and answer "I do" to inform your intent. And the applicant should stand also. Oath. Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to make is full truth and to the best of your knowledge? Yes. Yes. Okay. You may be seated. Thank you very much. We have Michael up first to provide an introductory details about tonight's hearing. Michael?
Thank you, Chairman Zelmer. The property at 117 South River Lane is located in the far eastern section of the local Geneva Historic District and is classified as a contributing property within that district. It is also identified as a contributing property in the Central Geneva Historic District, listed in the National Register of Historic Places. The gable front residence was erected between 1918 and 1921, and at least 3 additions were constructed between 1950 and 1988. The entirety of the exterior was altered with new windows and siding between 1950 and 1988. Although the property can be documented back to 1848, the present structure dates to the early 20th century. Although it was believed earlier that Axel Isaacson and his wife and family occupied the property, recent research shows that that is not correct, as the Isaacson home was located on the west side of River Street between James and State Streets. In 1920, the property was acquired by Martin S. and Helen Sekulik. Martin Sekulik was an Eastern European immigrant and had married Helen Hierenstein following the death of his first wife. The Sekulik family invested nearly 30 years into the completion of improvements on their riverfront property. The circa 1918 and 1921 structure likely was new construction when the Sekuliks occupied the property. The Sekulik family probably occupied the River Street house on a seasonal basis for several years. Initially, according to Geneva History Museum file information, the Sekulic family vacationed at the riverfront property in Geneva. The file information suggests that a primitive dwelling existed on the site at the time they purchased the property. The Sekulic family is one of the first families to develop and improve property along the riverfront on River Street, now River Lane, and they had to start from scratch according to historical accounts. The Sekulic dwelling matches the general dimensions and locations of a portion of the present residence. The Sekulic spent many months, possibly years, cleaning and clearing the riverbank and the river itself. From the river, documents identify that they dragged such items as a cook stove, a farm wagon, a water tank, and thousands of smaller discarded items. Eventually, the Sekulic's efforts resulted in a beautifully landscaped lawn along the river. The Sekulic's efforts likely predated Kate Raftery's ambitious and visionary River Lane beautification project, and in fact may have served as the inspiration for Mrs. Raftery. The Sekulic's primary contribution then to the property and River Street was their beautifully landscaped grounds. The house appears to have been comfortable for occasional or seasonal use, but was utilitarian in nature more than an architectural statement. The front of the house seems to have been oriented to the Fox River rather than to the street. In 1940, the River Street house was rented by Martin and Martha Sekulic, the sons of the original owners. He enlisted in the United States Army in 1943 and left Geneva at that time. In 1949, the park-like property with its landscaped grounds, rock gardens, and a summer house was sold to attorney Theodore W. Schroeder of Glen Ellen. In 1950, Mr. Schroeder sold the property to Mr. and Mrs. Emerson N. Cox of Chicago, who planned to remodel the building and make many improvements. Between 1950 and 1955, the east-facing screen porch was enclosed as year-round living space, and a new screen porch was erected at the south elevation of the original dwelling. Between 1967 and 1968, the Emersons embarked on the construction of a one-story addition at the south of the original dwelling, along with a remodeling of that home. The original detached garage was raised before 1988, when the existing garage and breezeway were constructed. The 1950 to 1960 modifications made by Emerson Cox were completed within the period of significance for both the Central Geneva Historic District, 1835 to 1966, and the local Geneva Historic District. The 1967 to 1988 alterations were completed after the period of significance for the nationally designated historic district, but potentially within the period of significance for the locally designated historic district. Based on research and physical investigation, no portions of the present-day residence erected after 1950 have achieved historic significance in their own right. The applicants have submitted an exhaustive document of approximately 120 pages of detailed information that was included in your packet, but I would like to run through a few of the items just for those who may be watching and did not look at the whole packet, or those in attendance. So again, the property was assembled by the Sekulics. They acquired several parcels and acquired additional parcels on either side of them and sold off parcels over their tenure, resulting in the lot that is shown today in blue on the left image. The present owners, Cox family members, have sold the property to the applicants, Joe and Sheila Spitza, and have graciously supplied numerous pictures of the house in the 1950s and later, after the Cox family occupied the property. These two two images show the original Sekulic home on the upper right, and then an image of the extensive improved landscaped yard at the rear facing the Fox River. As I said in my introductory notes, it appears that the house originally turned its back on River Street, which in 1920 was a little more than a dirt road. And this area was known as the Sicilian Colony, and was identified in newspaper accounts as the slums of Geneva. And the Sekulics chose to open their house to the Fox River with the screen porch and the main entrance to the house towards the river side beyond the gate shown in the picture. This is a current image of the property that was submitted. And again, another view from the southwest, looking at the front elevation with the 1988 garage in the foreground and the Sekulic home in the rear. close-up view of the 1967, 1968 addition, as well as the 1988 garage and breezeway connection. Again, a view from the northwest to get an idea of what the Sekulic house looks like today, with the west elevate or the north elevation shown on the right image as being covered primarily in vegetative material at this point. For reference, just to clarify how the house has evolved over time, utilizing plans that were submitted by the applicant, the light red section is the original Sekulic house, 1920 to 1950. The blue portion shows the initial additions made by the Cox family. The green shows the 1967, 1987 addition, and then the yellow is the 1988 addition for the garage and the breezeway. As this illustrates, the Sekulic house is enveloped by at least 50% of additions, and then with the modification of siding and windows, 100% of the original Sekulic house has been altered in some fashion to some degree. So the questions before the commission at this point are whether there is a retention of historic integrity in the overall form and location on the site of the original Sekulic house, and also a consideration of the loss of historic integrity. As I mentioned, more than 50% of exterior walls have been modified or enveloped. There's a large addition to the south and the east. Window openings and style of windows have been altered. Historic signs either been removed or covered. And there is also an architectural skirt roof added to the west elevation that is inconsistent with the original historic architecture. Within the period of significance for the historic district, 1835 to 1966, the questions are the 1950 to 1966 Cox alterations associated with notable people or events? And are those additions made between 1950 and 1966 valuable for the study of architectural style or a method of construction? Beyond the period of significance for the historic district, there can be questions raised for exceptional architecture or exceptional buildings. So are the post-1966 alterations associated with notable people or events? And are those modifications made after the period of significance extremely valuable for a study of architectural style or a method of construction? And then, as I mentioned, the Sekulic's primary contribution to River Street and this property is the highly landscaped effort that they put into the property over 30 years and the cleaning of the Fox River that led to the redevelopment of River Street. As the images submitted by the applicant, you can see what the rear yard looked like in 1950 with the summer house, the extensive arbor structure and other landscape features, and what is left of the yard today. This is, I believe, and the applicant can correct me, I believe the current view on the right is taken from the house looking towards the river, where the other view is from the south property line looking back towards the house, is my understanding of these views. So the question is whether there's integrity left in the landscape and whether there is a loss of historic integrity in the landscape that was contributed by the Sekulic family. So with that, I would turn the lectern over, or turn it back to Chairman Zellmer to call the applicants to the lectern to make their presentations.
Thank you, Michael. Would the applicant please step forward and make your, present your testimony? Please.
State my name.
Yes.
I'm Sheila Spitza. This is my husband, Joe Spitza. And first I want to thank you for holding this special meeting. I know that it's on the tail of a holiday weekend and hopefully we didn't pull you away from any special plans. So we really do appreciate that. My husband and I are really excited about moving to Geneva. we've been a part of this community for over 20 years now. We own a business out in Geneva Commons called Wet Nose, and we've had multiple locations over the course of our 22 years of owning that business. We had a location up in Glenview, a location in Oak Brook, and a location here in Geneva. And over the course of the last couple of years, we decided to downsize and chose Geneva as our primary and only location for our company. So we've lived in Bartlett in a townhouse for 25 years, probably even more than that. And I've always wanted to live in Geneva, but we've never had either the means or the time or really have found the property. And
I also don't think we were even aware early on what Geneva presented in terms of a place to live and a place, and actually really a community. You know, I feel walking in here, I feel a part of Geneva already, because this is the fourth time that we've been in here for various matters and stuff. So this almost feels like a very comfortable place already. We are, I would reiterate what Sheila said, we're really excited about becoming even more a part of this community.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, we've selected this to be our home. And, we go down onto 3rd Street all the time. It's interesting because even though we live in Bartlett, we do all of our grocery shopping in Geneva. We do all of our shopping in Geneva. I mean, we go to restaurants in Geneva. I mean, this is where we spend all of our time, and we're driving back and forth all the time. Not that that's relevant, but just a little bit of history about us. And so one day we were driving home, and I actually stumbled upon River Lane, if you can believe that. I've never been down on that street. And I was driving down it, and I thought, oh my goodness, these are so beautiful, charming homes. And that's the best thing that I can describe, is I just felt the street was very charming, because so many new construction, so many developments now are all the same. They're very cookie cutter, and that's one of the things I don't like, and one of the things that I don't care for necessarily where we live. And the other thing I find too is that a lot of the homes are so massive. And Joe and I, it's just us. We don't have kids, so we don't have a need for a 5,000 square foot home with 5 or 6 bedrooms and a full, basement. So to find something that kind of fit what we were looking for has been a little bit of a challenge over the last 20 years. And then when we found River Lane, I was just like, I'm going to stalk River Lane until a house becomes available. And then after I go through this deep dive, I realized that does not happen often, because most of the homes are all owned in trust and are in the family for years and years and years, decades. And one day we were walking down the street, and I was just like, what is this property here? It's like you can't even see it. It's hidden behind all of it, just hidden. So again, I went in my little Google sleuth to find out who owned the property, and started befriending Carol, who is the trustee and the daughter of the original owners of the property. And over the course of the last 2 years, I've been messaging her back and forth, waiting for her to come, to be ready to finally put it on the market and sell it. And we're very fortunate and grateful that she selected us, even though she had dozens and dozens of people call her and approach her to purchase this property. But to her, she wanted to, I got a little crying. To her, she wanted it to go to somebody who was really going to love it and appreciate it the way that she did and her family did for so many years. And that's how I feel like we would be for this.
She's been wonderful, and even I was mentioning to Sean earlier, just a moment ago, that Sheila's dad was down to take a look at the property this past weekend, and Carol's son cut pathways in the tall grass so he could actually walk the property, because he's not as sure of foot as he used to be. And they've been really wonderful throughout this whole process, their whole family. So,
and I think, the thing that's sad is that, the property is in such disarray. To me, it breaks my heart that it's gotten to this point. And if there was something that I truly felt like could be salvaged, I would give it a go. But
yeah, you would.
yeah, I would.
Not me. When we first were walking and we saw this property, we've been married for over 30 years, right? But I was just like, keep walking. But the one thing I value more than anything, I know I said it before, is that it's not even necessarily where I live in terms of like the structure, as long as it's a structure that'll stand up, is I like community. I need people. I enjoy people. I hate to say that because a lot of people don't, but there's a difference here, and there has been for 20 years, even from where we've lived for over 20 years, where there's really no community. You know, there's no energy, there's no, my community there is simply from the people that walk their dogs, and I know them. Other than that, everybody sort of really stays to themselves. So this is really a breath of fresh air.
Well, it's even interesting too, because when we called around for companies to get some demolition quotes, because it was part of our presentation packet, when I emailed Alpine Demo, I didn't say who I was or, about our company, but she recognized my email address. And she responded right away, and she's like, we shop in your store, and our dog loves your treats. And so it's just neat, because all the different people that we have been in contact with during this process, including our neighbors, our new neighbors that are around us, either know of us or our store, or their friends or family or relatives know us and our store. And that's kind of cool. So I'm really excited about that.
So we were working on a plan to possibly address buying if Carol was willing to. But, it was expensive, and we figured out a plan ultimately. But at the time, I was making a delivery to one of our customers, Pam Chodine, right? And I pulled in, and she's on the road. She's 2 doors, 3 doors down from where we are now. And I hesitated to tell Sheila, because I was like, this is just going to fuel her fire. And at the time, I was sort of hitting the brakes a little. And so it's really nice, because we know her. We've known her for a long time, but we've met both our neighbors on both sides and 2 neighbors across the street. And it already is, it's been good for us. I hope it's been good for them.
Yeah, and they're all excited,
Yeah.
super excited.
Yeah.
Okay, so any questions for us?
At what stage are you in the planning process right now? Did I miss that in the packet? Like some sort of proposed something? Like, is there anything on the table?
I don't think we have to even consider anything on the table right now
Okay,
as part of the public hearing. And anything that would come into this would have to come through this committee again.
right. I'm just wondering, so we're looking to take the whole shoot and match down, like everything, every part of this from, the 1920s building, and, to me, because that's really the only thing at play here, everything else seems sort of immaterial. It's just like, the question, I think, for us is, what are our feelings on that building from the 1920s? And from looking here, Michael, what is your assessment over just the condition of the structure in general? You've been there.
I have been there, but I think it'd be more appropriate, they've had professional architect and engineer look at this, and so I think it'd be more appropriate if they would like to have your architect speak to that. So if Sean Gallagher wants to come to the lectern.
Good evening, Sean Gallagher, 427 Anderson Boulevard, Geneva. You see me a lot up here. And I'm not one to be hasty about participating in a teardown. You have my report. I can't tell you anything more than what my report tells you. The box that's original is 16 feet by 24 feet. As a salvageable structure, I would say it wouldn't even function as a garage. It's not big enough to facilitate that, right? The structure within has been compromised due to deterioration over time, and also the fact that we know that older houses tend to be built in current code standards with smaller structural members and with greater spans, and there were some images in the packet I sent you which shows that the roof is starting to drop down a bit towards the center, so we're losing some of the tie of the roof. Lisa, to your question, you're right. The core of this is the original 1920s box, right?
Yeah.
And it has been clad with, we think T111, but I saw last week T111 may not be what it is from our previous applicant for another project. But that said, a lot of all the original openings have been changed. Other than one opening that faces the river, that has an original window in it. It has all been reclad with different materials. On the inside, we see that it has been clad with board and batten. So we think some of the siding may be under there, but most of it has probably been removed when Mr. Cox put in new material for that. There was a window that faced due south that has been turned into a doorway, and just the general configuration of that second floor has changed enough such that it's not really usable because head height is so low. So it really is very low. And the stair that is currently functioning lands at a 4.5-foot knee wall. So as you walk up, you're sort of walking off to the side in order to make that. So the Cox family was a very adventurous family, clearly. But to that end, that would be my response, Lisa.
Yeah,
So your opinion is that it does not meet code as it's currently built, and it would need extensive renovations to get it up to code?
Sure, we could run through every member if you want, as far as rafter sizes, 2x4s, space 24 on center, and and there are some portions of the roof that are falling in on the interior, at the top of the stair, probably near. It's sort of near the chimney that was applied to the outside of the house, so that becomes a place where a lot of water collects. But yes, Paul, to your point.
I have a feeling, and I'm just saying what I'm thinking right now, I have a feeling that renovation to this existing structure might end up with an entirely new building by the time it's all said and done. That's what I'm saying. And here's the thing. So this is the Historic Preservation Commission. We are speaking about properties that land within a certain district and properties that land within a certain time frame. And, it's in the district, it lands within the time frame, but I don't know if it's a salvageable building. I think that's the real question, because it doesn't seem like it.
And Sean, thanks so much for putting together your report. It was very informative and very, very helpful. And yes, your viewpoint and your expertise is highly valued because of your ability to try to salvage and save historical buildings. So we truly appreciated what you put together. I just have one question for you, Sean. We have the cost analysis of a potential renovation of the existing house, meaning the historical portion of the home. How does that renovation compare with the cost of a new house? Do we know?
So here's where I was hamstrung in my numbers. And you probably saw that, right? So you saw all the projects that I've done. So these are the comprehensive figures for those projects, which includes new portions and remodeling of existing. There's no way I could parse those. So I came up with a sort of raw figure of, I think, 264 or 246.
246.
246 was the raw number. So that's all in for all remodeling with additions. And if I were to separate that out, I think that the remodeling piece would be higher because it's much cleaner for new. But to that end, that's the best I could give you. And I know the Spitzes gave you some numbers of comparable recent purchases in that neighborhood as well, which was kind of a square foot cost for some of those. So.
I did jot another note down here. I saw a picture of the summer, they refer to it as the summer house. Is that still on the property? Oh, that is also gone. Okay.
Yeah, the only thing really left in the yard is some of the remnants of pieces of that wall that was there, that curved wall space. That's it.
And you're right, it's very unfortunate that the property has gotten to this state. which makes it difficult for us at times because it's in the historical district, it's a historical home, but we have to take all these factors into consideration.
Of course.
So it's a very hard choice for us to make because, of course, we would like to preserve as many buildings as we can. But based on what we have here, it seems like we don't really have too many options. That's my viewpoint.
The only thing that I would lament the loss of is, you know, you look at that photograph from 1950 and you look at the photograph from now and you do see, you know, that front-facing gable. It might be the back of the house, you know, but I don't know if maybe it would be gone with a new house, that particular profile. I don't know. We're not at this stage about what you're going to actually put on that property, but maybe it would be nice to see the memory of some of those old forms in the new design.
I will note that from first floor to ridge is less than 20 feet. It's probably, I believe, about 18 and a half feet.
Oh, because it's a little, yeah.
Yeah, so you could imagine, it could be a one-story structure, right, where it'd be a full story and a half
Something.
inside, but it makes it challenging with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess, would you say that technically and financially, it's infeasible to incorporate that 1918, 1920 building into a new structure?
I believe it is because of the fact that so much would have to be structurally reinforced and also, so not knowing anything about what the condition is underneath. Replacing all of that siding, and then, now that we're gonna replace the siding, we should really do an infiltration barrier. Okay, great. So we add layer upon layer of likely cost, which then is almost to a new cost, plus keeping the old, right? So that financial component really does become not only prohibitive, but then the transformation of that structure is no longer itself. It's now something altogether reimagined, right? So that would be my.
Basically, you have to tear that down in order to make it livable, and if you built it back into that exact form, it probably doesn't suit your needs, maybe, or would be something that would be not able to incorporate it into a new residence that would have all of the, I'll call them bells and whistles for lack of a better term, but things that would be expected of a home there on River Lane.
Correct, and as you can imagine, so this, again, back to Michael's report, this was originally a little cottage, a little escape, right? And it, you'd love to go in there and see how escapey it is, because it's tiny, right? So from that end, to get that, to even, and to Lisa's point, so if we did something that was kind of a tall, thin structure that was 16 by 24, which is about the size of a living room now, and I know that bends reality sometimes, but now you're talking about something that you're reconstructing altogether that really is functionally useless.
Right. And there's really no known historical significance to that. There's no person of note that lived there. That portion of historical integrity or significance doesn't exist anymore, particularly based on the modifications that have been made.
Yeah,
And
and to that point as well, there's nothing, I know one of the lenses you should be looking at this through is there some unique technique that's been brought to bear on this structure? And it is a spot-on, typical balloon-framed 2x4 structure.
Yeah.
And again, 2x4 cottage.
Because it was a summer house at one time.
Correct, yeah,
And-
yeah, it was almost like one big three-season building, right?
Correct. Is there, the foundation looks questionable, do you?
I think that's a good observation, Mr. Zellman. Yeah, it is. And it's my understanding that at some point it was dug out, and then they came in and they added, so in this case, it's a rusticated block that they came in. So that would have been 1920s, that would have made sense, 20s, 30s, 40s, somewhere in there. And right now, there's just 4x4 posts on the soil, holding up a beam that's running through a wood beam, that's a 4x4 beam, that's carrying the 2x6 floor joists that are spanning 16 feet. So now you got a 16-foot span you're cutting in half with a 4x4 beam and 4x4 posts on the soil. And a lot of that has started to shift and drop because of moisture in that. And it's just planted right on soil. It's not planted on any sort of pad or footing.
And not a. not a
Story
piece-
gets better.
Yes.
I guess the only I don't disagree with everybody about, our job is to preserve, various structures, whatever. But, one of the case in points here that, to make note is that what we're looking at here is truly the back of the house. So the thing is that of any kind of significance in the design, it would have been facing the opposite way. So we're not really preserving anything here other than the back of a summer cottage, because any kind of, you're saying, Richard, I think it's screened-in porch and other things were on the opposite side facing the river
And the back of the house has been altered considerably.
dramatically. And there's really not, and I read through all the other notes regarding the foundation and the joists and the various things, and, I'm not disagreeing with you, Sean, that, it's done its job.
I think that's
That's kind.
a good position to take with it. It served its purpose for the many generations that have been able to enjoy it.
I have no other questions or comments.
I think, so you're complete with your testimony to this point unless anyone else,
Unless there
no
are-
one else has any other questions from the commission. Everything that, all the questions I have been answered, so thank you very much. Michael would like to identify that we have received a letter of support for the demolition.
Yes, I'd just like to add into the record that the property, this public hearing was duly noticed and posted, and we have not received any letters of objection to the request, but we did receive a letter dated today from Preservation Partners of the Fox Valley expressing support for the request for demolition of this property. We have a practice of not reading the whole letter into the record, but I can make it available, and I did see that Mr. Watts has arrived, and so I don't know if, when you offer opportunities for public testimony, if he wants to read the letter into the record or not, that, we'll leave that to his choice.
Okay.
So the letter is in support of the demo?
Yes.
Okay. Well, with that, since the applicant has completed, is there anyone in the audience that would like to testify? And no one online? Okay. Okay, next, I guess our next step is, do we feel like we have enough information presented in the packet and through the testimony of the applicant to make a finding of fact about this property?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I guess with that, I would get a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing?
I'll second that.
Do we do a voice vote on that, or did, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. The public hearing is closed. So now we would have if someone would make a motion to either support or deny the application for demolition. And then we can have a motion on that, and then we can discuss the notes of that, the merits of that.
So I'll move to approve the proposed demolition of an existing residence at 117 South River Lane
Without exception. Correct.
without exception.
Second?
Okay. If we want to, we should probably state the finding of fact that we found from the testimony of the applicant and the reading of the report. I think if I can summarize it, or if someone else would like to just,
It's all you, Paul.
oh, thank you.
That's why you're in the big boy chair.
I know. Thank you. So I think that the commission has found that although this house was built during the period of significance and added on to many times during this period of significance, it has been altered irrevocably over the last 30, 40 years from what it was the original house from the 1920s. And the historic portion of that house doesn't really exist in a state that can be renovated without completely rebuilding it and not having it come out more like a new house that looks like an old house, thus creating a false sense of history. So between the structural issues, the renovations that were done, and just between the structural issues and the renovations, I believe that we have found that it is no longer historically significant at this point, and that the demolition can move forward. Anyone have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just to summarize, I mean, it would be like the architectural integrity no longer exists, if it ever had any, as well as the structural integrity.
I believe
no longer
that,
exists.
yes, that the architectural integrity, after many years of renovations and remodelings, is gone.
As well as the historical significance of it also, because of the modifications that have been made.
Okay. With that, if we can get a vote on the motion on the,
Jensen,
Aye.
McManus,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Solomon,
Aye.
Zelmer.
aye, motion carries. Okay, thank you very much. Next on our agenda is the secretary's report, staff updates.
So I have a couple of items this evening. The building permit update is that we have two applications processed this last week. Staff report is that we have had 2 permits processed since we met last week, and there are 10 more in progress. But then I have an update for you that came about from last week's case that I'd like to bring everybody up to date on. After we met on this last week, and the applicant is seeking to install new siding where no historic siding exists below this 1970s remodeling. And after the meeting, Commissioners Phillips and Jensen were at the Geneva History Museum and discovered this street view that shows the house there at the center. And it identifies a couple of things that were in question at the last meeting, and that is the double or the paired attic windows at the street-facing gable. So both of the windows that are in the possession of the owner were originally in the house at that location. It also shows some of the detailing of the gable, etc. The images that we had last week were of the attic framing, were a little bit unclear, and it's been better resolved now that there is an original horizontal 2x4 header that would have been above the paired windows. The other framing is replacement framings circa 1950 to 1970. The sheathing in between those areas is replacement sheathing where the windows would have been located. And the original stud framing was cut to accommodate the octagonal window that was installed at this time of this remodeling. The other thing that is interesting when you blow up the image is, this was slightly touched on in the discussion, is that it appears that it's a flush gable above those double windows, very similar to the house at 418 Ford Street that you're familiar with. It was a very common detail in the Queen Anne era. So what does all that mean? What it means is that I shared this image with the applicant, with the contractor and the owner, and they were very intrigued by it, and so they are slightly modifying their request. I think it's all can be handled under staff review, but I wanted to bring it forward to you. They are considering installing, let me go back here. They are considering installing straight coursed shingle siding in the second floor on the north side and the 3 attic gables, north, east, and south. And they will be replicating the trim details and the potentially the flush gable at above the attic windows. So they're going to add to the project and pursue that. And then because of this photograph that has surfaced, they are also considering at some later point, or maybe contingent upon, or consistent with this current work, to add the historic front porch back. But that will be coming to you to review the porch if and when they decide to add the porch. Whether it's glassed in or whether it's an open porch is yet to be determined when they pursue that. So again, I always encourage our applicants to make a visit to the Geneva History Museum. I can't take them there, but I do encourage them to go. And with the surfacing of this image, it certainly has given a lot more clues and has made them a lot more amenable to doing more extensive work than they originally had proposed. So
Back to the picture of the existing. From the outside, do we have one from the outside?
okay, are there any questions about the status of this project?
So the flush gable would only be reinstated potentially on the street side gable?
That's the only place the photograph shows that that condition existed. So again, when they strip this other siding off, I think we'll have some ghost details that they'll be able to follow. They're actually getting a high-quality, high-resolution scan from the Geneva History Museum to help guide their workers on site with the trim details and what have you to replicate those details.
Did they talk about whether or not they're going to try to do something with the coloration of the site?
Kevin, gotta turn your mic.
Again, we don't review color per se. We do have the ability to review on semi-permanent materials. Whoops, what happened here? So, hang on one second. So they did show you the full color range that's available in the LP Smart side, so they would be doing some combination of that. I have tried to encourage them to consider a more of a 1900 polychromatic use of the colors that are available, but they also like the 1950s, 1965 view here that shows it with a white body and a dark gable. So again, we don't really regulate color, but those are the two options they're leaning towards. So I'll continue to work with them on behalf of the commission until at least June 14th. So, any more questions about this project?
I don't.
With that said, that was my segue into, I didn't give you a 5-minute field guide this evening because I had some remarks I wanted to share with you. So it's been suggested rightfully that I am verbose in my attempt at clarity. I hope that has benefited the commission through the years. But tonight I will attempt to be as brief as possible in sharing my gratitude for serving the Geneva community since 2013. First of all, I am grateful to our elected officials, the mayor and council members under whom I have served, for supporting the challenging work of preservation in the Geneva community. Secondly, I'm expressing my most sincere appreciation of those community advocates who have spoken up and led the charge on matters of importance to the preservation community. Because once a historic property is lost, there is no second chance to get it right for the ages. Thirdly, I must acknowledge the city staff who have been supportive through thick and thin in my 11 and a half years here. In particular, I appreciate City Administrator Stephanie Dawkins for her wisdom and unwavering leadership, Director of Economic Development Kathleen Timoshenko, who understands the close relationship that exists between historic preservation and economic opportunity, the dedicated staff within the Building Division who work cooperatively with preservation to ensure that permits and enforcement matters within the Historic District are processed in a coordinated and timely manner. And last but not least, my supervisor, David DeGroot, Director of Community Development, who has been a constant and valued supporter of preservation and procedure. When David and I have had differing perspectives on an issue, he has been willing to hear me out, discuss where our viewpoints diverge, and find common ground. David has continually educated himself on the best practices in the field of preservation and has been diligent in their application. Fourthly, I extend my gratefulness to those applicants and professionals who have sought to uphold the standards and policies adopted by the City of Geneva. In the majority of cases, you have been willing and often eager to understand and implement the expectations of this commission. Your preparedness has made my interaction with you easy and successful. Finally, I extend my deepest appreciation to each of the dedicated commissioners, past and present, with whom I've had the pleasure to work with for over 11 years. I don't believe you, as volunteer commissioners, are thanked enough for the time and thoughtfulness you put into each case, from the simplest case to the most complex. I have appreciated your willingness to learn about the tenets of preservation and uphold those standards and values. I respect your professionalism, your candor, and your clarity. I appreciate that you have voiced your own opinions on matters before this commission, even when that meant standing in the minority. I admire your tenacity, and I especially admire your restraint when both have been required. I value that you have challenged me from time to time, but most of all, I value the professional kinship that we have forged by working together. In closing, I hope the Geneva community believes that I have done my best in building upon the foundations of those who have preceded me. I wish the very best for my successor. And I encourage each of you to continue the worthy efforts to preserve and protect one of Geneva's most valuable and vulnerable assets, those ordinary and extraordinary places that tell the fuller story of Geneva and its people, both past and present. Our collective legacy transcends our own careers or lifetimes. Future generations will judge our efforts based upon our choices, our wisdom, our values, and our contributions. I appreciate the opportunity to contribute to that intricate tapestry known as preservation here at Geneva, and from the bottom of my heart, I thank every one of you.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you for being here for 11 years.
Some days it seems like 2, and some days it seems like 20.
Yes. Okay, any new business from the commission? And anything from the public? I think. Please state your name for the record.
Al Watts, Preservation Partners of the Fox Valley, 8 Indiana Street, St. Charles. I'm going to make this brief because I know Michael does not like to be in the spotlight, but I feel it's necessary that myself and our organization thanks Michael for his service for this commission. Personally, he's basically been my mentor, even though maybe he doesn't know that. But I've learned a lot from Michael, and I really appreciate everything that he's taught me, and I hope that he doesn't lose my number and doesn't block me on his cell phone when he gives it to me later, so that we can stay in touch. And just again, just from our organization, all of our members, on behalf of our members and our board, one of our board members is actually here. Just thank you very much, Michael.
With that, if I can get a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We're out.